We are living in a time of enormous danger for global biodiversity, and now more than ever we need to understand the world around us and the challenges we need to overcome to protect it. We've all heard of endangered species, like the African elephant and the giant panda. But what does that word endangered really mean? And what has to happen for a species to get that label? Let's find out. Many of you watching this will have heard of something being described as an endangered species. Many species, and not just animals but plants and fungi too, are under threat of extinction. This can happen for many reasons, and many of those relate to human activities like deforestation and overfishing. When you're trying to solve a problem, one of the most important steps to take is to make sure you understand the problem first. And that is no different here. One organisation that works on this problem is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or IUCN. Starting in 1964, the IUCN started their Red List, which aimed to assess the threat of extinction that species faced. The modern version, that we'll be focusing on today, started in 1994, and has been growing ever since. The Red List classifies species into one of 7 categories. These are least concern and near threatened for species under no immediate threat of extinction, vulnerable, endangered and critically endangered, the so-called threatened categories for species currently at risk of extinction, and extinct in the wild and extinct for species that are already lost or are confined to either captive or non-native populations. There are also 2 more categories, data deficient and not evaluated, for species that are either pending assessment or could not be properly assessed. At the time of recording, around 147,000 species have been assessed for the Red List, and of those, around 47,000 are classed in the threatened categories, meaning they are facing threat of extinction. Of those 47,000, around 10,000 are in the critically endangered category, meaning they are facing immediate and serious threat. These numbers don't look particularly encouraging, but how did we arrive at them? Trying to work out which category a species should go in is very labour-intensive and requires lots of fieldwork and analysis. Researchers have to go out into the field, all around the world, and attempt to gather data on their species of interest. They will attempt to measure or estimate a number of key variables, such as the size of their population and the amount of habitat they have to live in, and compare these to criteria set out by the IUCN. There are 5 key criteria aimed at quantifying both the stability and viability of a population. These are, firstly, how big or small is the population? Is that population either shrinking or growing? How many adult members of the population are there capable of reproducing? Is their habitat either small or fragmented, or both? And finally, does some sort of quantitative statistical analysis show that they are likely to go extinct within either a given number of years or generations? An example of an analysis that would meet this final criteria is a population viability analysis, or PVA. Depending on how a species scores across each of these 5 criteria, it is assigned a classification in one of the 7 categories. Species with a very small and shrinking population that live in a small and fragmented habitat and that seem likely to go extinct within a few generations would be placed in the critically endangered category. Species like the Australian mountain pygmy possum and Wollemi pine tree are critically endangered. Meanwhile, a species with a large and growing population, living all around the world in a diverse set of habitats and showing no signs of dying out anytime soon, would be classed as least concern. Species like the mallard duck fit this category well. There are major discrepancies in how completely different groups have been surveyed. Birds, for example, are almost completely surveyed, while most groups of plants and insects are still massively undersampled compared to their total diversity. In fact, data deficient is the second most common classification on the Red List, meaning that there wasn't enough information to properly classify them. It's easy to imagine how hard it must be to do these surveys. Some species only live in extreme or remote places like Antarctica or the deep ocean, while others live in parts of the world that are troubled by political instability or even war that disrupts researchers' ability to work there. And that's saying nothing of even finding the funding to do the research in the first place. When we consider these challenges that the researchers doing this work face, it's really no surprise that so many species go either unsurveyed or languish in data deficiency. Even at a glance, we can see interesting trends in the threat data gathered by the IUCN. The severity and threat of extinction risk is different among the different groups of life. Amphibians, for example, are threatened with extinction at a far higher rate than almost all other major animal groups, like mammals or birds. This might tell us that trying to protect rivers and wetlands should be our top conservation priority, to protect the thousands of species under threat within them. And that really is the key thing here. This is all about identifying priorities. The IUCN Red List is used in planning by several UN agencies and informs important international legislation like the CITES framework. CITES is voluntary for countries to join and provides guidance on passing laws to protect endangered species. Around 40,000 species are protected in this way. If we can work out what species are under the greatest risk of extinction, we can focus our efforts on protecting them. This is especially important for ecologically critical species. For example, African elephants are an endangered species that are absolutely crucial in regulating their ecosystem by knocking down trees and regulating the growth and spread of vegetation. Ecologically important species like this are sometimes called keystone species. Some charismatic endangered species, like the giant panda, can be used to rally public awareness and support for the cause. Species like this are often called flagship species. But the data collected by the IUCN can be used for identifying more than just individual species as priorities. The Red List has been used to identify many key biodiversity areas, regions and habitats identified as being particularly important for regulating the stability of environments both locally and across the wider world. KBAs are mostly used by governments and NGOs in planning spatial conservation efforts like protected areas. Ecosystems function as a whole, and their health is crucial for all life on Earth, including us. From water cycling to pollination, these so-called ecosystem services lend tens of billions of dollars a year to the global economy, and we simply couldn't make do or even survive without them. As we said at the start of the video, understanding the scope and scale of the problem is a key step in working out how best to solve it. But the work is far from done. The roughly 47,000 species classified by the IUCN as facing risks of extinction are just a fraction of the real total. The UN Environment Programme and IPBES estimate that roughly 1 million or more species are actually facing risk of extinction right now. It's hard not to feel a sense of impending doom when talking about conservation. Every day more habitat becomes damaged or polluted, and the list of extinct species is only getting longer. But giving up just isn't an option. So I think it's important to highlight the good news in this area whenever we can, to remind us that action taken right can work. So, let's remember that pandas have been downgraded from critically endangered to vulnerable. Let's remember that strict anti-poaching and anti-hunting laws in Botswana have given them the largest population of wild elephants in Africa. And let's remember that while they are still endangered, the population of blue whales, the largest animal ever known to have lived on our planet, are on the rise. If you're interested in today's topic and want to find out more about endangered species and the work of the IUCN, you can visit IUCNRedList.org. I've put the link in the video description along with some other interesting ones. And also, one other thing before we go, my channel is still very new. I plan on making more content about evolution, paleontology, conservation and general biodiversity. So if you like what you've seen today, please consider subscribing to the channel and keeping an eye out for more videos in the future.